Being president sounds like the ultimate power trip. But what if we told you they can't even drive on public roads? Not just during their term, but forever. Biden owns a Corvette he can't drive. Trump bought a Tesla he's forbidden to use. Obama got special permission just to drive inside the White House gates with all exits locked. The reason behind this ban involves a tragedy that changed everything. And the restrictions don't end there. Former presidents live under rules that sound more like house arrest than freedom. Phone and technology restrictions. Imagine holding the most powerful job on earth, but not being allowed to scroll TikTok, check Instagram, or even use a regular phone like everyone else. That's the strange reality for presidents and former presidents of the United States. Their lives come with bizarre tech restrictions that sound more like something out of a spy movie than real life. Back in December 2013, Barack Obama admitted something surprising. He couldn't use an iPhone. Not because he didn't want one, but because of what the Secret Service called security reasons. Instead, he had to hold on to an old BlackBerry from 2009. It barely ran modern apps, but it was heavily modified to prevent anyone from tracking him. Why all this caution? The same year, leaks from the NSA revealed something chilling. Intelligence agents had found ways to hack iPhones and spy on up to 38 different features. They could even monitor world leaders like Germany's Angela Merkel. The concern wasn't just about calls. It was about GPS, real-time location, and making someone like Obama an easy target. When he first took office in January 2009, Obama fought hard to keep his BlackBerry. Eventually, they let him keep it, but only a stripped-down version. He could email a tiny list of close aides, and that was it. Meanwhile, his daughters, Sasha and Malia, were free to use iPhones as much as they wanted. That probably made it sting a little more. Things only got more dramatic over time. On January 6, 2021, while chaos unfolded at the U.S. Capitol, official White House call records showed something strange. A gap in Donald Trump's call log that lasted 7 hours and 37 minutes. People started asking hard questions. Did he use burner phones to avoid being tracked? It wouldn't have been the first time his phone use raised alarms. In 2019, a whistleblower revealed that Trump's call with Ukraine's president had been hidden on a top-secret server. Not because of national security, but because it contained dirt on Joe Biden. Even after leaving office, former presidents can't just walk into a store and buy a laptop or phone. Everything has to be checked by the Secret Service. When Trump didn't follow those rules during his term, his phone got hacked more than once. Even their mail isn't safe. In October 2018, explosive packages addressed to Obama and the Clintons were caught and neutralized at special scanning facilities. These extreme measures go all the way back to 1963, after the assassination of John F. Kennedy. That one moment reshaped how presidential safety works forever. Since then, even something as basic as driving has been taken away from them. Driving restrictions. It began in the aftermath of JFK's death on November 22, 1963. He was shot while riding in an open-top Lincoln during a motorcade in Dallas. After that, the Secret Service changed everything. Presidents and even ex-presidents are no longer allowed to drive themselves on public roads. It's just too risky. Now, they're always in heavily armored vehicles with someone else behind the wheel. The law that backs this up, the Former Presidents Act, passed in 1958, gives them lifelong protection, but at a serious cost to personal freedom. Lyndon B. Johnson, who became president after Kennedy, was the last one to break this rule. In 1964, just months after the assassination, he raced his car near his Texas ranch at 75 to 85 miles per hour. He even forced another car off the road and tried to ditch his own security team. After that incident, the rule was strictly enforced. and Johnson never pulled a stunt like that again. Before that era, things were different. In 1953, Harry Truman, no longer president, once stopped on a Missouri highway to help a farmer round up pigs. That became a charming story in the press. But the key detail? It happened on private land, not public roads. That's the only reason it was allowed. Today, even car lovers feel the weight of this restriction. Joe Biden has always been obsessed with Corvettes. Back in 2014, he half-joked that the biggest reason not to become president was because he wouldn't be allowed to drive one. He owned a 1967 Corvette Stingray, and as vice president, he once did a burnout in his driveway in Delaware. That was the only place he could legally do it. Barack Obama in 2012 got special permission to drive a Chevy Volt, but only inside the White House gates, with all exits locked, just in case. And when Donald Trump bought a Tesla in 2025, he said plainly, "I can't drive it." Not because he didn't want to, because the rules won't let him. Dining and food restrictions. The way presidents eat isn't just about fancy dinners and polished silverware. It's more like a spy movie than a mealtime. Behind every plate is a network of rules, fears, and people whose job is to make sure the most powerful person in the world doesn't drop dead after a bite. During George H.W. Bush's time in the early 1990s, things got so intense that Secret Service agents didn't just stand around. They brought his own ketchup and bottled water to restaurants. They washed every plate, knife, and fork by hand. One of them even stood in the kitchen, tasting the food before it reached his table. They weren't being overly cautious for no reason. They were preparing for the worst. Poisoning was a real fear. It sounded like something from ancient royal courts, but this was modern America. When George W. Bush was sworn in back in 2001, Navy food experts arrived at the Capitol by 6 in the morning to taste every single dish at his inaugural lunch. From steamed lobster to grilled bison, nothing was served until the tasters gave the green light. These aren't imaginary roles. Even when presidents travel overseas, military staff are sent ahead to try meals in foreign kitchens, sometimes right where rat poison sits on the same shelf as flour. It didn't stop with them. Barack Obama, in 2013, had to turn down a lobster salad prepared by Senator Susan Collins at a Capitol Hill lunch. Not because he didn't like it, but because his team hadn't checked it first. He reportedly just sat there, staring at it. Collins said he looked like he really wanted to eat it. But protocol overruled appetite. That same thing happened all over the world. Whether it was in Paris restaurants or dinners hosted by heads of state, his teams inspected kitchens, pantries, and ingredients before he could take a single bite. Even sudden cravings got crushed. In 1993, Bill Clinton had a casual dinner with the Gores, but even then, agents hovered in the background, watching how the food was being made. A month earlier, one taster who had served under 3 different presidents was sent to a Silicon Valley event to check the meals. These people weren't chefs or critics. They were defenders with forks, ready to block danger one bite at a time. And then came that moment in 1990 when Bush Sr. declared war, not on a country, but on broccoli. He hated it so much that he banned it from Air Force One. This childhood hatred turned into a national drama. California growers responded by sending 10 tons of broccoli to the White House. Ironically, the controversy boosted broccoli sales by 10% almost overnight. The White House couldn't eat it, so they gave it away to food banks. It became a strange mix of protest and charity, all because of one man's veggie vendetta. In Turkey, even President Erdogan's team took no chances. By 2015, every bite he ate was tested for poison. No incidents were reported, but the fear stayed. In the U.S., things were just as tight-lipped, though less openly talked about. Security didn't just mean bodyguards anymore. During a 2024 dinner in New York, President Biden's team sent in drones and bomb-sniffing dogs to clear an Italian restaurant. They didn't even shut the place down fully, but they controlled the kitchen like it was a military base. And this wasn't for a formal banquet. This was just dinner. Even though the country spends millions to promote nutrition, like how Bush's administration increased nutrition funding by 76% by 2008, when it comes to their own plates, presidents live in isolation. Meals are high-stakes missions. One mistake could mean disaster. What looks like luxury from the outside is actually a fortress of fear. Gift limitations. Being President of the United States sounds like the ultimate job. You're surrounded by power, security, and international respect. But imagine someone hands you a cute little puppy as a gift, and instead of hugging it and walking away, you're told you can't keep it unless you buy it back from your own government. That's not a joke. It actually happened. In 2003, Bulgarian President Georgi Parvanov gave George W. Bush a fluffy 2-month-old Karakachan Shepherd puppy. Bush loved it. But the moment it landed in his arms, it legally became government property because of how gift laws work. The value of the puppy was around $390, just above the limit allowed for gifts to public officials. So Bush had to pay out of pocket to keep the dog. And this isn't a one-off situation. The law behind it goes back to Article 1, Section 9 of the U.S. Constitution, which blocks presidents from accepting gifts from foreign governments without Congress saying yes. The whole point is to prevent corruption or backdoor influence. Then, in 1966, they passed the Foreign Gifts and Decorations Act, and later updated it in 1977, saying any gift above a minimal value, today that means anything over $480, has to be handed over to the National Archives or bought back at its real-world price. It sounds strict, and it is. When Argentina sent Bush 300 pounds of raw lamb in 2005, Secret Service likely had it destroyed. Why? Because perishable gifts aren't allowed either, since they could be poisoned. So not only do presidents need to file reports every year to the Office of Government Ethics listing what they've kept, they even have to pay taxes on those gifts. Yes, even for a dog or a decorative plate. And this goes way back. In 1862, Abraham Lincoln was offered elephants by the King of Siam, which he politely declined. But a few years later, Rutherford Hayes said yes to something much more permanent. Queen Victoria gave him a 300-pound desk carved from the timbers of a British ship, the HMS Resolute. That desk still sits in the Oval Office today. In 1997, Bill Clinton was sent a massive rug woven by Azerbaijani women, showing his and Hillary's faces. Barack Obama once received a sparkling horse sculpture worth $500,000 from Saudi Arabia's King Salman. He couldn't keep it. It had to go straight to the government collection. But here's the strange twist. Even though presidents have to give up dogs, meat, and precious gifts, there's a loophole. In 1992, Congress quietly carved out an exception. Presidents aren't bound by the same ethics gift rules as other executive branch officials when it comes to things tied to their future foundations or libraries. That means while diplomats are giving up perfume sets and watches, former President Trump might walk away in 2025 with a $400 million luxury jet from Qatar, gifted for his presidential library. Critics are furious. They say the same rules forcing one president to pay for a dog let another accept a jet. The original idea was to block corruption. Instead, it turned into a list of absurd headlines, publishing and copyright restrictions. The words that come out of a president's mouth aren't entirely theirs. Under Section 105, of the Copyright Act passed in 1976, anything written or created by federal employees during official duties, including speeches by presidents, immediately becomes public domain. That means no copyright, no control, no royalties. Anyone can use their words, remix them, sell them, or slap them onto T-shirts and advertisements without asking. Think about Barack Obama's 2009 inaugural address, or Reagan's famous "Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall" speech in 1987. Those powerful lines can legally be used in commercials, memes, and YouTube clips forever. It's not a modern fluke. The idea began with an 1834 Supreme Court case called Wheaton versus Peters. Back then, a court reporter named Henry Wheaton sued another reporter for publishing Supreme Court opinions he had collected. But the court ruled that no one could claim copyright over government work. That decision eventually spread to presidents. Even earlier, George Washington signed the first Copyright Act in 1790, but decades later, the public still got free access to 7,000 pages of his personal letters. In 1841, the Folsom versus Marsh case allowed pieces of those letters to be published without permission. That ruling introduced the idea of fair use, but at the cost of presidential privacy. By 1895, Congress locked the rule in for good. They passed the Printing Act, banning copyright on government publications altogether. So when Nixon's Watergate tapes were made public in 1974, anyone could sell copies and keep the money, except Nixon. The same happened with Bill Clinton's 1998 impeachment transcripts. They flooded the internet, became media gold, and Clinton got absolutely nothing from it. And in 2025, the tension exploded again. On May 8th, President Trump fired Carla Hayden, the Librarian of Congress, who had become a symbol of progressive policy in the literary world. 2 days later, on May 10th, he dismissed Shira Perlmutter, the Register of Copyrights. That move sparked chaos. The Copyright Office belongs to Congress, not the President, and Trump had no legal power to fire her. But it happened anyway. For the next 12 business days, about 20,000 copyright registrations were frozen. No certificates were signed. Perlmutter sued, claiming her firing violated the independence of the legislative branch, but a judge refused her emergency restraining order. Court hearings were scheduled for July 2025. Ironically, Trump had spent that same year attacking AI companies for using copyrighted material without paying creators. But thousands of his own official tweets from 2017 to 2021 are now public domain. Over 50,000 of them can be copied and shared freely, thanks to the very rule he ignored: White House living restrictions. One of the most frustrating rules of White House is that none of the 147 windows can be opened, not even slightly. Every single one is sealed shut for security reasons, trapping presidents and their families inside a perfectly polished box. Michelle Obama once opened up about how deeply this affected her. In a 2016 interview with Stephen Colbert, she said that during Barack Obama's time in office from 2009 to 2017, even something as simple as feeling the wind through a car window became a rare luxury. She remembered one moment in 2013 when her Secret Service agent allowed her to roll down the window on the way to Camp David for just 5 minutes. She called it a treat. That's how intense the restrictions get. It wasn't just her. Ronald Reagan, who served from 1981 to 1989, hated the feeling too. After the 1983 Beirut barracks bombing, threats were everywhere, and even he admitted the White House felt more like a gilded cage. And it wasn't always like this. Before 1945, windows could be opened, but post-war renovations added thick bulletproof glass. You'd think that would be enough. But in 2014, a man named Omar Gonzalez jumped the fence, ran straight into the building, and got through an unlocked door. That one event shocked the nation and reminded everyone why security stays so extreme. By 2009, they had even installed weight-sensitive pads under the Oval Office floor so agents could quietly track movement without entering the room. Privacy became something they watched, not something they had. And then, there's the money. Despite earning a $400,000 salary, presidents have to pay for their own personal meals, groceries, and even toothpaste. That's not a joke. The state covers big official events like state dinners, but if the family wants pancakes on a Sunday morning, it comes out of their own pockets. Michelle Obama wrote in her 2018 memoir, "Becoming that one peach, just one, ended up costing $500 because of where it had to be sourced from." Even Abraham Lincoln's wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, got tangled in this system. During his presidency from 1861 to 1865, she ran up a $27,000 debt on groceries and clothing, which would be worth about $500,000 today. She became so desperate, she once considered selling White House manure just to pay the bills. Laura Bush was shocked, too. She and her husband, George W. Bush, lived there from 2001 to 2009, and she couldn't believe there was no clothing allowance. Barack Obama had to personally fund Michelle's massive 50th birthday party in 2014. Food, waiters, cleanup, everything for 500 guests came out of his pocket. Donald Trump, who followed from 2017 to 2021, sometimes ate at his own properties. But even then, if the food wasn't part of an official event, he had to cover it himself. These rules go all the way back to 1792, laws created to keep public and private funds separate. But that means presidents can be negotiating world peace one minute and checking the grocery bill the next. Mail and privacy restrictions. For years, every single letter sent to or from the president is rerouted through off-site Secret Service facilities. Nothing is trusted at face value. Machines scan for radiation, biosensors sniff for poisons, and robots carefully open anything risky. Every envelope, every birthday card, every private note goes through this routine, not just during their presidency, but even long after they've left office. It never ends. In 2020, the Postal Inspection Service handled over 125,000 suspicious mail cases nationwide. 10 dangerous incidents a day. Nearly 40% of those involved mysterious white powders. That's the world they live in. Some cases have been truly terrifying. On September 19, 2020, a letter addressed to Donald Trump tested positive for ricin. It came from Canada and carried a poison that's 6,000 times more deadly than cyanide. There's no antidote. Officials feared more letters were still out there, and they were right. That same toxin had been sent before. In 2018, a Navy veteran named William Clyde Allen III mailed crushed castor beans, the raw form of ricin, not just to Trump, but to Defense Secretary Jim Mattis and others. In 2014, a man from Mississippi named James Everett Dutschke was sentenced to 25 years for mailing ricin-laced letters to Barack Obama and public officials. And a year before that, in 2013, an actress named Shannon Richardson got 18 years in prison for doing the same thing to Obama. This level of fear reshapes what privacy even means. Former Secret Service agent Jonathan Wackrow once said that being under protection is the most intrusive thing that anyone could ever experience. Imagine every love letter or medical bill being opened and read by strangers, every single time, for the rest of your life. There's no turning it off. No former president button that brings peace. Post-presidency restrictions. One of the strangest things about being a former U.S. president is that you're never truly alone again. Even after leaving the White House, you're followed by a team of people trained to protect you. This rule came from a law passed back in 1958 called the Former Presidents Act. It gave ex-presidents lifetime protection from the Secret Service. But in 1994, something surprising happened. Congress decided to limit that protection to just 10 years for anyone who became president after the start of 1997. The reason was to save money during a time when federal spending was exploding. If that rule had stuck, Bill Clinton would have lost his security team in 2011. But things changed again in 2013. President Obama signed a new law called the Former Presidents Protection Act, which brought back lifetime coverage. This didn't just affect future presidents like himself or George W. Bush. It also meant that any president going forward would have full-time protection for life. The reasoning was simple. People still want to harm former leaders even after they've left office. Just think back to 1981 when Ronald Reagan was shot while still serving. That moment showed how dangerous things could be. Interestingly, Richard Nixon is the only former president who ever turned down this protection. He officially declined it on the 1st of July in 1985, which was 11 years after he resigned over the Watergate scandal. Nixon said he wanted to save taxpayers' money. Back then, it was costing about $3 million per year to protect each former president. Instead, he paid for his own private security. That choice left him more vulnerable, especially since many people still held deep anger toward him. But most presidents haven't followed his example. That's because Secret Service protection isn't just a bodyguard with an earpiece. It includes threat assessments, security planning, and even agents sent in advance to places the ex-president might visit. In fact, on the 24th of October in 2018, Secret Service agents stopped pipe bombs that had been mailed to Barack Obama and Bill Clinton. They were sent by a disturbed Trump supporter named Cesar Sayoc, who built the devices inside a van. If the Secret Service hadn't been there, it could have ended in tragedy. There was another strange moment in 1995 when the 10-year rule was still active. Some officials even discussed removing protection from former first ladies. That plan didn't go through, but it caused panic. These days, the cost of protecting all living former presidents adds up to over $50 million each year. The agents rotate constantly, staying close at all times. They don't even let presidents drive on public roads. They can't go out without a plan. They can't be spontaneous. That's the price of staying safe. In 2025, something unusual happened again. President Trump ended the extended protection for Kamala Harris just 7 months after her term as vice president ended. That decision came on the 29th of August and stirred up massive outrage. Normally, former vice presidents get 6 months of protection, and they can get more time if there's a credible threat. In Kamala Harris's case, the threats were very real. One terrifying incident happened in July 2024, when a man carrying weapons was arrested near one of her campaign events. Critics, including California Governor Gavin Newsom, said that Trump's move was clearly political. They warned that protection was never meant to be a tool used for revenge. It's supposed to save lives. That reminder goes all the way back to 1975, when Gerald Ford survived 2 assassination attempts just 17 days apart. In both cases, his agents stopped the attackers. Bathroom privacy. Back in 2017, Secret Service agents assigned to Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner found themselves in a bizarre situation. They weren't allowed to use any of the 6 bathrooms inside the couple's massive house in Washington, D.C.'s Kalorama neighborhood, so the agents had to find creative ways to relieve themselves. At first, they used a porta-potty parked outside, but neighbors weren't happy, and it was quickly removed. That forced agents to drive a mile away just to use the bathroom at Mike Pence's home. Sometimes they ducked into restaurants like Chipotle. One time, they even used the garage bathroom at Barack Obama's house across the street. But that didn't last long. A supervisor reportedly left behind a nasty mess in the fall of 2017 and Obama's detail immediately banned them. Eventually, the government ended up renting a tiny studio apartment nearby just for bathroom access. It cost $3,000 a month, and by 2021, the total had crossed $100,000. A senior law enforcement official said they had never seen anything like it. Then came a shocking breach in 2022. A senior Secret Service agent assigned to the Obamas broke protocol in a serious way. He invited his girlfriend to their empty home in Hawaii and even sent her photos ahead of time. He jokingly suggested they do something inappropriate in Michelle Obama's bathroom, comparing it to the Mile High Club. After this scandal surfaced, he was fired. It wasn't just one mistake, it was repeated security violations. Things didn't calm down. On July 27, 2024, agents were preparing for a Kamala Harris fundraiser in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, when something unbelievable happened. They couldn't find a bathroom, so they picked the lock of a closed hair salon called 413, which was owned by a woman named Alicia Powers. They even covered her security camera with duct tape and let a stream of people use the place for over 2 hours. That included emergency workers. Powers later said she felt completely violated. The Secret Service apologized and said it was all a miscommunication with local responders. But stories like these keep piling up, showing how far the agency will go in the name of safety.